Welcome to Harvest Take 5 with Jerry Anderson. Harvest Take 5 is a weekly ministry of Harvest Baptist Church, where the previous week's sermon is condensed into a short but powerful life lesson. We all have busy lives. Together, let's stop and learn to take 5 for the things that are really important.
Welcome back to Harvest Take 5. I'm Jerry Anderson, pastor of Harvest Baptist Church. And this week we looked at Habakkuk chapter 3. Now Habakkuk was a minor prophet. And what you have to understand about Habakkuk is exactly what is going on when he ministers. In 3 short chapters, we get a picture of the life of Habakkuk. Habakkuk ministered at the end of the nation of Israel before they go into exile. And time was not good for Habakkuk. He lived in a time when they were being ruled by wicked kings, a corrupt culture, idol worship everywhere. The influence of Israel was waning and the strength of the enemies was rising. And Habakkuk had even been informed that God was going to use a wicked nation to punish Israel. And he's heartbroken and he's frustrated. And all he wants is God to save him. And he cries out in Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 2, he says this. He says, "I've heard all about you, Lord. I'm filled in awe of your amazing works. In this time of our deep need, help us again like you did in years gone by." He's simply crying out. He says, God, what I really need, I know about how powerful you are, but right now I need you to help you. See, what Habakkuk is longing for is the Old Testament principle of the day of the Lord. Now, as Christians, sometimes we think of the day of the Lord as the time when Jesus comes back and brings Christians to heaven. But in the Old Testament principle, the day of the Lord was a time when God would come and rise up and judge the wicked and put things right. And that's what Habakkuk is longing for. He's longing for God to come and make everything right because he knows that God is able to. And I don't know about you, but sometimes in my life I go through these seasons where it just seems like God isn't moving like I need him to. And it's heartbreaking because I know that he can. I know that he's done it before. But for some reason, right now in my life, God just doesn't seem to do what I need him to do. And that's what Habakkuk's going through. And in the midst of this, he goes to the rest of chapter 3, talking about how powerful God is. And that's the hard part, because sometimes, even in our most difficult situations, we know that God can do it. But he says this right now in the verse 16. He says, "I will wait quietly for the coming day when disaster will strike the people who invade us." What he's saying is, I will wait quietly and patiently for the day when God comes and delivers me. You know, when you're going through a difficult situation, the hardest thing to do is wait. The hardest thing to do is have patience on God to work. And that's exactly what Habakkuk says. He says, I am going to wait quietly. I am not going to complain. I am not going to cause any anger. I'm not going to shake my fist at God. Instead, I'm going to wait patiently for God to show up and set things right. And then he sings this song of a beautiful phrase. He says, even though the fig tree has no blossoms and there are no grapes on the vine, even though the olive crop fails and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the fields and the cattle barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I'll be joyful in the God of my salvation. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes me as sure-footed as the deer, able to tread on the heights. Here's what he says. He says, even though everything around me is hopeless. So understand, he is ministering to an agrarian society, which means their whole hope is based on the outcome of the crops and the flocks. And he's saying, though everything is hopeless, though I look right now and it's desolate and it seems like there's no hope, I'll rejoice in God because he's my salvation. See, the next step we have to have is this. In addition to waiting, we have to choose to not look at our circumstance and worship God, because he says this. He says, the sovereign Lord is my strength, and he makes my feet sure-footed like the deer. I just spent some time in Nevada, and it was amazing to watch these bighorn sheep climb up these mountains really fast and down and able to do all this quick moving and not stumble. And what he's saying is the Lord God, the sovereign God, the God who controls the whole universe, the God that made you, the God that made me, the God that cares for us in these difficult situations, upholds us and makes our feet able to jump and move in these treacherous things with a sure-footedness to know that we won't stumble. See, when you understand that we serve a God who is able, a God who is sovereign, a God who is in control, it lets us wait in the most hopeless and stressful of times and worship God and move forward. I want to encourage you in whatever situation you're facing right now, whatever hardship you're in, whatever difficulty you're in. If it seems like God isn't moving, I want to implore you, I want to beg you to wait patiently on God. And in your waiting, worship Him and understand that even in the most difficult times, where it seems like He's not moving, where it seems like He's not helping, He is upholding you. Thanks again for coming to Harvest Take 5. My name is Jerry Anderson, and I want to remind you that there's always room for you here at Harvest.
Thank you for being a part of this week's episode of Harvest Take 5. If you live in the Dyersburg area and are not currently involved in a church, we would love to see you this Sunday at 11 a.m. Harvest is located at 544 Fuller Road in Dyersburg, Tennessee. Until next week, remember, take 5 minutes for what really matters, and remember, there's always room for you at Harvest.